Yeah, that sounds about right. Hello, it is Creature, and today we're going to be talking about Parkitect. This game is a theme park tycoon management sim. If you've played Roller Coaster Tycoon or Planet Coaster, then you know exactly what this game is. First, let's talk about the graphics, and there's not too much to talk about here. The graphics in this game are alright. I'd say that they're more in that indie style of graphics. You know, they're the very minimalist kind of single color style of art. Very simple and inoffensive. Islanders, Kingdoms and Castles, The Witness, RimWorld to an extent all have this same kind of style, so it's not really much to write home about, but it's still nice. It's not too busy and you can keep up with everything that's going on without being too overwhelmed. And it still looks good as well. And when you build up some stuff, it fits right in, regardless of what type of building style you do. It all kind of connects. But we'll talk about building later. Overall, I'd say that it's better to have a good and simple art style rather than a busy clusterfuck of colors and textures to look at, especially in a management game like this where you have a million different things going on your screen. And it's also going to be easy enough for any computer to run that's been built in the last 2 decades. From what I can tell, all the music in this game is made by a shell in the pit. So that's something. It's not completely stock music, and it's pretty catchy to be stuck in your head for a while. I mean, just listen to the song that's playing right now, and I'm going to cut it out so you can hear just what the game sounds like whenever you're building or doing something. It doesn't have any bangers, and nothing's really gonna get you going a little bit, but there's a large number of vanilla songs. Then you can add a bunch more to your specific rides if you want to give it a little bit of a flavor and more pizzazz. These are all nice little songs, but I will say that the rock and roll song for the rides did sound kind of like a mix between Doom and Ram Ranch, so you can take that for what it's worth. Speaking of adding music to your rides, you can also add music to your rides via your own individual music on your computer. So hey, if the rock and roll song makes you think of Ram Ranch, then you can just add it straight into your game instead. Whenever you add the songs into the game, they are modified to kind of match what's happening to the ride, whether or not it's broken down or not, which can be very interesting as the ride, if there's the restraints are broken and it speeds up, it'll cause the song to speed up, and if things are broken, it will cause it to speed down, which can cause for a very unnecessary level of existential dread as Caramel Dancin' slows down and starts to sound like nightmare fuel. But the ability to make your park into an actual meme is there, and if you have the same song playing on different rides, they will sync up with one another, so that also does save a good amount of headache. With that out of the way, let's start talking about the actual gameplay. This game is all about building the park rather than the actual park management aspect of it. It's almost like it's in the title. 9 times out of 10 in the campaign and 10 times out of 10 in the sandbox, you're going to be given a plot of land with nothing on it and some starting cash. Everything that you build is going to go into how your patrons navigate your park, and setting up pathways and facilities for them can really feel like herding cats. Very lazy, autistic cats who can't be bothered to throw things into the trash cans and need to sit down every 5 seconds. So you're going to need to have an exorbitant amount of benches and trash cans. The building is grid-based, which I actually prefer. It makes everything much more streamlined and nicer looking. The building menu is easy to navigate, and pieces can be bought for relatively cheap, but they do add up quickly. While the pieces are simple, it does allow for very complex building to make very nice looking scenery. If you can't be bothered with building everything, the workshop will have a lot of blueprints available that you can add to your game while you play. But you can never go wrong with throwing up more string lights than an autistic Adderall addict on Christmas. The rides can be divided into two kinds, attractions and coasters. Attractions are a much more stable source of income, but are extremely limited in their appeal and ability to attract new customers. They are super small, so they can be packed in very tightly in order to maximize space. And space is going to be your main enemy in this game. For the most part, land is very finite, and you're going to need to min-max your space usage extremely efficiently in order to be able to turn a profit. And this brings us to coasters. Coasters are big, expensive, and costly. However, they are much more profitable and popular, so they can draw in a ton more customers than a normal attraction, and they're going to be making you a lot more money. But you are going to be using a lot more space in order to build them, so it's a fair trade-off. Each ride you build is going to need to have a queue. This allows people to line up in order for you to maximize the amount of people on your ride, as well as have some people waiting to get on. But you're going to need to be careful, because people will wait 3 hours for the teacup ride. But whether or not that's justified can negatively impact your park rating, which means fewer people, which means less money. You will also need to build shops so you can extract even more money from your people. There are things like food kiosks and drinks, as well as utilities like ATMs and bathrooms. And to clean and stock these facilities, you're going to need staff in order to keep your park's infrastructure going, as well as actual park infrastructure. 3 things, namely, a trash chute, a depot, and staff pathways, and a break room, so that's 4 things. You can also build a staff training facility, which I feel is kind of useless for the price. Your customers hate seeing these buildings, and just having another one really does make things useless, considering instead of spending hundreds of dollars in order to train up your staff, you can just buy more staff and it'll be just as efficient for cheaper. But like I said, your customers hate seeing these buildings, as they don't like being reminded of their jobs while they are on vacation, so that will decrease your decoration rating, which decreases your park rating, which decreases money. But they can be covered up with walls and fences to negate this. So if you're clever, you can kind of turn them into decorations themselves, like, hey, this is our staff room, but we're going to turn it into a castle. Woo! Depots and trash chutes can be connected to the main hub of the park with pipes, and depots and trash chutes are going to be necessary if you want to expand your park. These will set up spots where your haulers can get stock for your shops a short distance away, minimizing the time and the negative impact that will be had whenever your patrons see somebody doing hard manual labor. I'd recommend building what I call a shop hub, a sort of central focal point for expansion. It will usually have a couple shops, a bathroom, a hub, trash chute, and everything that your staff needs in order to properly maintain the area. Now let's talk about the backbone of the park, janitors. You can never have enough of these guys, because as I said before, people will take their trash and throw it on the ground. They are cheap to pay, and they have a huge impact on the park. The other staffers are haulers, the ones that we talked about before, who carry supplies to and from shops, security, mechanics, and entertainers. Entertainers are like your mascots. Security and mechanics are relatively self-explanatory. Security arrests people who break stuff, and mechanics fix the broken stuff. And you're going to want some mechanics if you want to minimize the nightmare fuel that is your slowdown songs. Money is also a thing. If you run out, the game is over. You'll get a 1-month warning whenever you start going bankrupt, and if you don't meet that 1-month period and get a little bit of profit, the game will end. You can get money by obviously having people in your park and buying ride tickets and food, but you can also take out loans in order to speed up the growth of your park. You can have only 2 loans out at a time, and each loan will subtract a percentage of the loan from your monthly income, and that does not pay off the loan, that's just a flat fee. But besides staff and managing debt, that's all there is to park management, besides the odd piece of marketing, which is roughly a single payment rather than a cost over time. There's also research, but that's mainly I'm going to set aside $100 or $200 a month for my researching team to research new rides and attractions for the park. It's not really an active part and much more of an afterthought, really. There's a bunch of different scenarios in the campaign that can differ from, here's a plot of land, build a park with a few hundred people in it by the end of the second year to succeed, to, okay man, I really fucked up. I built this park and spent all my money on a really shit coaster that's barely profitable, and I'm about 10k in debt, and I need you to fix this park in like 2 weeks or less, or the mafia is going to be coming to my house to break my legs. Also, if you can have like, I don't know, 1,000 people in it, that'd also be really cool, man. There are two kinds of objectives, primary and secondary. The primary objectives are usually time sensitive, and the secondary ones can be completed after the deadline. And that's basically it for the campaign. And I can say it does get extremely stressful whenever you get right down to the wire and you fail a deadline and you have to start all over. What the fuck? God damn it. There is saves coming, but at that point, you're just too defeated and start over. Hope you saved some blueprints. The difficulty of each scenario is just more people, better rating, and better profit, and a slightly longer deadline. The Sandbox is just pick a map and have fun. There are settings and restrictions that you can have, like do you want to have money enabled, do you want to have research enabled, basic stuff. You can also add objectives, but for the most part, these are useless other than milestones to cross in order to give yourself a small cash injection. But if you've ever played any kind of management sim or video game in general, then you know exactly what a sandbox is. The game works off of very simple mechanics. Things break on a random timer that gets closer to breaking the longer something's been unattended to, etc. But the one thing I did want to talk about was the park goers and how they work. This isn't anything too complex, but what I will say is that marketing is absolutely useless. It won't give you any additional people. Each ride you build adds to the total cap of people that can be in your park. So through a little experimentation, I found that the carousel adds 100 people to the maximum cap of people that can be in your park. So you take that and whatever your approval percentage is, and if you have like a 1,000 person cap and 86% approval rating, then you'll have 860 people in your park. Finding the number that each attraction adds isn't anything too complex. You just make a sandbox map, place down a ride, wait for a few years in game, check to see what your approval rating is, then take the number of people in your park, the approval rating, and put it together, and you have the cap of people in your park. I haven't tried it with coasters, but I think it might be a little bit complex because you can build them with multiple parts. Let's look at the actual AI of the patrons though. They're like ants. They will walk through any path regardless of what's at the end, so they will walk straight into a dead end and then turn around. So my recommendation is to have your park very cyclical, with each part connecting to one another, and make sure there's always stuff to do. Some guests prefer to have more intense rides, others prefer to have calmer ones, so it's a real good rule of thumb to have a pretty solid mix. If you don't want to build your own coasters, just like with the normal decorations, there's a ton on the workshop. I made one that's called Sultan's Castle that's on the workshop. It's a little over 3,000 without decorations, 8,000 with. It's a high intensity, which getting a ride with high intensity can be a pretty big hurdle to get over in the early campaigns. So, feel free to use it. Speaking of workshop, there's a shit ton of stuff on there, made by some really talented people. I would say a solid 70% of all of my park's decorations that aren't string lights are straight from the workshop. It's a really good source if you don't feel like dumping a few hours just building stuff. But hey, if you do, save your builds and upload them on the workshop so that other people can use them and save some time. Think of it as like passing it forward. This is a good game. There's nothing really wrong with it. There wasn't any glitches or major bugs, and that's always good. I had a lot of fun with it, and I actually prefer it more to Planet Coaster. Mainly because it's not intimidating, because the grid-based building system doesn't make my monkey brain hurt when I'm trying to line things up. And it makes the game look a lot nicer and it's easier to build without you needing to put the same amount of effort that a Pixar animator puts into their projects into your park. If this game seems like your kind of thing, then I'd recommend it. And if you've played Roller Coaster Tycoon as a kid, this game will feel extremely familiar to you. It's normally $30 and it goes on sale regularly. I'll give it a solid 7 out of 10. And here's the overall list. Parkitect is in 7th place, just above Kingdoms and Castles and just below Star Wars Battlefront 2. Really appreciate everybody who subbed and watched my videos over the last year. Started this channel almost a year ago exactly, but I think I'll make the official channel birthday be on New Year's Day, right whenever this thing should be going up. It's been so much fun this far, and after a year I think I've started to get used to everything, getting used to editing, and made some pretty good friends along the way. I will say that we are just getting started. I've got some pretty solid plans for the future and for 2021. Assuming that we're not all dead at the end of 2021. But let's just hope next year's going to be a little bit easier for us than this year was. I plan on, making reviews, doing some Let's Plays, and I actually might start doing some D&D. I'm going to try to get with some of my old buddies, and you know who you are. Yeah, that's right. We're going back. We're going back. So I'm going to want to record all of that stuff and put it on the channel for y'all to see us fumble through about in a homebrew that I've made. So if you want to see any of that stuff, just hit the bell, drop a comment. Please drop a comment. I know everybody says this, but it actually does help a lot more than you would think. And thanks again for everybody watching and subbing and joining with me for this long. This is a good year, but let's make this next coming year even better. Peace.